So the APU is probably running now. Yeah, the APU is running, so we can disconnect the primary external power from on. Is gonna become a variable, and now the APU is providing all the electrics in the aircraft. So I think the boarding is gonna be finished quite soon, so we can do the performance. So yeah, boarding completed. So 0 fuel weight from the flight plan, or it would be from the load sheet, which would come on the data link. Let me close the door first, otherwise it's gonna keep beeping. So close the door. Here we are. Yeah, it's coming. Beep, beep, beep. So 0 fuel weight 224.9. So enter that. Got 55.6 tons of fuel. That gives us a gross weight of 280.5 minus the taxi fuel we're gonna burn on the way out to the runway. That's gonna give us weight of 280. So that's what we were talking about earlier on. So that makes sense. Then the performance tool there give me an assume of 60 degrees. And 90.1 on the N1, yeah, it gives me 89.9. So what, as I said before, what PMDG gives you is actually quite accurate. Engine out acceleration is 1,000 feet, and then 3,000 and 1,500. The flaps, we said that was 5. CG, depending on what PMDG is giving us, it's 26%, so it's slightly back CG today. And then the speeds are gonna be 165, so slightly different. 169 and 172. So we got a V2 of 172 today. The speeds are a little bit different, but hey, it's not the end of the world. So 172 LNAV, VNAV, 254 and 7,000 feet initially. So we're good. The doors are closed. Outside they tidied up everything. We're good to go. Alright. Ground FedEx.
Go ahead.
Disconnect the ground equipment. Please disconnect the ground equipment.
Roger.
Alright, so it's gonna disconnect everything. So the chokes, all the cables for the ground power, all the cones and stuff on the ground, I believe, go. Yeah, everything is tidied up around the aircraft. So that's good. Can we pressurize hydraulics?
Roger, you're clear to pressurize the hydraulics.
Alright guys, everyone's seated. We're all buttoned up and ready to go in the back.
Thanks.
If you need anything, just let me know.
Before start procedure.
Are we cleared to pressurize?
Yes.
Okay.
Right, so the trim is 5.75. That's 5.5. 575. Yeah, with
I am ready for the
new
checklist.
simulation is going to be good next year. Before start, checklist.
Before start checklist. Flight deck door. Closed and locked. MCP.
Set and checked.
Takeoff speeds.
Set and checked.
CDU preflight.
Completed.
Completed. Trim.
Set and checked.
Taxi and takeoff briefing.
Completed.
Before start checklist complete.
Departure check completed. Bypass pin inserted. Release parking brakes.
Nose to the left.
Commencing push. All engines clear. Start at will.
Start sequence is 1 then 2. Start sequence is 1 then 2.
Check.
Start the left engine.
Starting left.
Alright, so the start switch
Oil
comes
pressure.
to start there. And we're gonna bring the fuel. The pressure actually says oil pressure, but doesn't really matter, I guess. So the N2 increases, the oil pressure does increase, that's why she called it. The N1 increases, and when it gets to about 32% N2 there, then it's gonna start bringing the fuel in. 33 at the moment, it's thinking about it, yeah, and the fuel comes in. Here we are. The push is looking good. The scenery out there is as a customized AFCAD you can find on all the good simulation websites. So nothing fancy, but it kind of looks quite good to me. So it's quite nice. And number 2, the number 1 is good. The red line there has disappeared, so that means the engine start has completed. Start the right engine.
Starting right.
So once again the start switch comes to the start position, and then bring the fuel in with the fuel control
Oil
switch
pressure.
to run. Once again she called the oil pressure now. Sorry, you don't always have to call it. So like always, N2 oil pressure, N1, then around 32-33% here. The fuel is gonna come in.
Set parking brakes.
Waiting your confirmation for good engine start.
Alright. Yeah, I'll confirm that. And then yeah, that's it. Everything is rolling up. N2, EGT, N1. The red line has disappeared, so the start is good. Flaps 5.
Locking gear.
Flaps 5.
Tow truck disconnected. Bypass pin removed.
We'll check the flight controls. Can follow on the flight control page. Everything is moving. The flight controls there are like reduced, so that's why they don't move. And the flaps 5 is also the prompt for the first officer to switch off the APU. If we had icing conditions, then the engine anti-ice would come on both sides. The wing anti-ice stays auto, we don't really use it for takeoff. And then check the recall again. That's good.
Left is clear. Right is clear.
The engineer is gonna go. Here it is. I'm not really sure. Oh yes, he's waving the pin, so we can kind of assume that now we are officially dispatched. So any failures and all that stuff, then we kind of deal with it as it comes. It's not really cool. Excellent. And the rudder as well moves. That's good. Alright, so after that we can do mute it before taxi checklist.
Before taxi checklist. Anti-ice. Auto. Recall. Checked. Flight controls.
Checked.
Ground equipment.
Clear.
Before taxi checklist complete.
Clear left.
Clear right.
Right, so that was the prompt for the runway turn off and taxi lights to come on. Add a little bit of thrust, 26% should get the aircraft moving. Today is a little bit heavier than on those short flights, so it needs a little bit more of a push. There's a little greeny patch there on the taxiway, so yeah, the scenery is not always perfect, but kind of does the trick. And I think I've said it before as well, like for example, the scenery we have in the real simulators is actually quite basic. If you look at what we have here in the PC simulation, it's actually much better and much more defined, so believe it or not. Right, I'm gonna taxi slowly and at the same time try to show you on the Aivlasoft EFB how you can follow the taxi progress.
The cabin is ready. Cabin crew, take your seats.
So yeah, as you can see, it's the aircraft is moving on the map, so it's really good. I really like it. It's above all on the ground when you don't know the places. It's really good. So I'll go back to the simulator. Before takeoff, checklist.
Before takeoff checklist. Before takeoff checklist complete.
Runway entry procedure.
Check. Clear on the approach.
That looks correct. Right, so that was runway 25 left. Takeoff.
Check.
Thrust ref.
Check. Thrust set.
On taxiway, on taxiway.
Yeah, it's the second scenery that gives me on taxiway when
80 knots.
on the hold.
Check.
When we're on the runway taking off, so there seems to be a bit of an issue with the scenery there. See you next time, my PPL. Have a good evening.
V1.
Rotate. Positive climb.
Gear up. Gear up.
Gear up. 400 feet.
Thrust rev, enough speed. Autopilot.
Check.
doing the turn over Karachi.
Climb.
That's quite nice. And then if we go to the Aivlasoft EFB, once again you can see the moving map along the departure depiction there. It's really nice. Alright, doing well so far. And actually we'll set all the way to 290. Once again, there's no ATC I'm flying with, and I'm not connected to any online networks or anything. And then once again, to demonstrate how it works, oops. If we press the altitude intervention button there, it's gonna delete the restriction at the KC509. So here we go. Press it. And the restriction is gone. Flaps 1.
Speed check flaps 1.
Flaps up.
Speed check flaps up.
Yeah, I was forgetting the flaps there. Chatting on about the altitude intervention. And after takeoff checklist.
After takeoff checklist. After takeoff checklist complete.
And that's pretty much it for the departure. So once the flaps are up, then we can go for the after takeoff checklist, and off we go. So on the first officer display there, we've got the terrain. On the captain's display here, we've got the weather. I can't undock the view there because, as you know, there's an option for that. Yeah, off we go. Yes, Said. Actually, this flight today is actually about for me the opportunity to discuss here the drift down and depressurization issues on this route. That's why also I kind of chose the routing of the flight to go over the mountains. You could kind of maybe get a more easterly route, but as I showed initially from the flight plan on the map, the route kind of goes to the northeast first. Let me try to get back onto the flight plan and look at the maps. Yeah, if we look at the maps, yeah, here if you look at the map, obviously you could cut like across India and maybe go onto a more southerly route and then go back up at the end of the flight. Here today we're kind of going up the way towards that waypoint called Purpa, which is the boundary between China and Pakistan, and then kind of take that northerly route. So depending on the time of year and jet stream patterns, then sometimes the jet stream is sitting a little bit more to the north. At this time of year, it's actually a little bit further south, so it depends a little bit obviously on from a flight planning point of view. You would choose the most economical routing. Today, as you can see, the wind is actually a little bit better further south here. If we look at the wind chart at 350, further north is not as good as here. But yeah, today is more about kind of showing you the drift down and the depressurization, above all over the high terrain. As you can see here at Pourpas, the terrain goes up to about 22,000 feet. The MSA is a little bit further up because you need to leave a big margin. So yeah, that kind of if you have a depressurization, obviously the normal objective is to go down to 10,000 feet, but here you can't go down to 10,000 feet because you've got like 22,000 feet mountain. So obviously you need to kind of descend step by step, and it's quite an involved procedure. So we'll discuss that as we get closer to it. Right, so we'll finish the climb. The weather seems to be clearing up a little bit, so that's only ORBX global, but we'll see a little bit outside, and we'll see what the mountains are like as well, which is nice. Not much around here, but you can see all those ridges and stuff. It's quite nice actually. Okay, no problem. See you soon. Thanks. So yeah, so pretty much all the airlines flying in that part of the world over the Himalaya would have some sort of a strategy to, in particular for depressurization. And although it doesn't happen every day, obviously, then you always have to plan for the worst just in case. So most airlines will have the drift down and depressurization strategies available to them. So I'll kind of discuss a little bit what I have and try to adapt it here to the simulation. As I said, this is a real world flight, normally on a 330 I believe, but still a real world flight. Air China going from Karachi to Beijing, and at some time of some periods of the year, I guess the routing is actually pretty much as it is today. Other times is maybe a little bit further south and more in an easterly direction initially, at least. But I'm sure at certain times of the year the routing will be going towards the mountains. If you look as well on the EFB, is now updated to the en route section, and you can see you got the airway there with all the safety altitudes. It's predicting a top of climb. I'm not really sure if that's going to be accurate or not, but yeah, the routing is here. So it's a good thing to kind of follow. You've got the wind details up there, 55 knots on the side, 14 on the tail, the current wind, which we have also in the simulator. It's quite nice. I like it. And as I've said before, like I used to have it always with me on the side, but I couldn't really display it on the stream. So here it is here. Right, so 33,000 feet. Step to 350, maybe it says 175 miles, recommending 330, so it's not too bad. So as I was saying earlier on, if we look for example at the engine out page to have an idea of what the level of altitude will be in a drift down, so if we had an engine failure, at the moment it shows level 230, so it's still a little bit low for the drift down strategies over the mountains, because some areas, as we'll talk about later on, suggest initially 26,000 feet, so that's a little bit too much. But if we look at this more closely, you can see that the computer shows there to fly level 230 it's going to take 190 miles, and the time in the simulation is now 11:21, and it says you'll reach level 230 in about half an hour. So because the drift down is so slow, you don't need to descend straight away to fly level 230. It's a very slow gradual descent, to the target altitude for the one engine cruise. So it's not as critical basically as the depressurization. The depressurization, obviously you need to descend straight away to a lower altitude, but for like an engine failure, the drift down is a very slow maneuver, and as you saw there, it takes about half an hour to reach the one engine cruise level. So the area, the mountainous area we're trying to avoid is not as extensive as that. So within half an hour and the kind of 200 nautical miles that was quoted by the FMC, that will be enough to kind of get out of the critical high sector, which is around 28 and then 26,000 feet. You kind of get out of there quite quickly. So